Hello, my name is Brian Good. I'm a representative of the company XDisc in Warsaw, Poland. And this is an instructional video to show you how to simply, quickly, and independently connect the parts of the photovoltaic system so that you can make use of the power generated from your ACTIVESOL kit. The video will consist of 4 parts. The first part concerns the methods and conditions for assembly of the ACTIVESOL kit. The second part shows the functions of the different parts of the kit. The third part concerns the maintenance of the kit. And the fourth part concerns troubleshooting, the different problems that can arise during installation and use of the kit. And now I will introduce to you the parts of the kit. First, this is the 150 watt polycrystalline photovoltaic panel. This here is the 12 volt ACTIVESOL battery produced exclusively for use in the ACTIVESOL kit. And this is the charge controller, complete with cable to attach the battery with the ACTIVESOL panel. Now I want to talk to you about installation conditions. Choosing a place for installation and preparing that place for installation are very important parts of this entire assembly process. Once the kit's installed, it's practically self-sufficient, provided an optimal place has been chosen for installation. And what I mean by optimal place, that means that 3 conditions have been met. First, energy production is maximized. Second, no damage can be done to the kit itself. And third, the electrical equipment that's supposed to receive the generated energy is easily and safely connected. Now I want to talk to you about the battery and the charge controller. This is the charge controller. It has 2 cables. There's a 10-meter cable that's, as you can see here, it's attached to the charge controller. And this is used to attach the charge controller to the panel. The distance between the panel and the charge controller should not be more than 10 meters. And these are the connectors to the battery. This is the second cable, which is 1 meter long, so the distance between the battery and the charge controller should not be more than 1 meter. If you want to use some other cable that is not included in the kit, you run the risk of damaging the kit or reducing the efficiency of energy production. The position that a photovoltaic panel should be placed depends, of course, on where in the world it is located. For example, in Central Africa, near the equator, it's best that the photovoltaic panel be placed in a flat position or even at a slight angle, say 3 degrees, which looks something like this. It's also important to remember that wherever the panels are placed, they should not be put in an area where a building or a roof can cast a shadow or leave the panel in the shade during the day. Now I want to talk to you about how to connect the parts to the ACTIVESOL kit. And I'll start by showing you how to connect the charge controller with the battery. This again is the charge controller. And as I mentioned earlier, the cable has been attached in the factory to the charge controller, so you don't have to do that. At this end, there are clamps, both positive and negative. Red is positive, blue is negative. And these will be attached to the terminals of the battery. I'll remove these covers. And for further reference, on the top of the battery here, you also have marked in red to show which terminal is positive and marked in blue to show which terminal is negative. And we'll start with the positive clamp, and we get it in position in this way by pulling them apart like this. And then we simply place it over the terminal, push it down so it's very snug on the terminal itself, and then close the cover, the red cover, and that's ready. The same with the negative. The blue, we simply pull it apart like this, place the metal cover over the terminal, and then close the blue cover. We now have the battery attached to the charge controller. Now I'm going to show you how to attach the charge controller to the photovoltaic panel. And if you look here, you can see that like the charge controller, the photovoltaic panel already has the cables attached. This is done in the factory, so you don't have to spend any time with this. They are ready to go. Now what we're going to do is take the cables from the charge controller and attach them to the cables from the panel. So we simply do it in this fashion. We need to remove the rubber connectors, and then we simply attach one to the other like this, and the second one's the same. There's a little rubber protector in that one. Remove that and then attach. Now we can have a look at the charge controller itself, and there is a green diode lit up. And that indicates that the panel is now generating energy. This shows that even in the limited light of this conference room, the panel is still able to generate power. The parts of the kit are now completely attached. As I showed you earlier, the green diode in the charge controller indicates that power is being generated. Also here in the battery, the active eye is showing green, also indicating that power is on. Now we'll do a test and put an electrical device into the charge controller and see if it works. I have here a DC bulb. I've got positive and negative cables, and I'm going to put them into the positive and negative ports here in the charge controller. Let's see what happens. I put it in, and then with a screwdriver, I need to screw it in. This is the positive first, and now the negative. And we've already got light. I'll just tighten it. And there you have it, a gift from the sun. Now I'm going to talk to you about the particular parts of the kit, the rules of use, safety, and maintenance. I'll start with the panel. The most important thing to know about the panel is that it collects energy emitted by the sun and converts it into electric energy. The ACTIVESOL panel is very self-sufficient. It doesn't require any maintenance. The only important thing to remember is that it should not be put in a place where it can be hit in any kind of way. The only thing you need to do is to clean it with a wet cloth on occasion if it's dirty or dusty. The charge controller is a vital element in the installation of a panel connected to a battery. Its main task is to control the flow of energy and also stabilize the charging parameters. In other words, the charger protects the battery from an overload of energy from the panel, as well as excessive discharge from connected electrical devices. The charge controller has 3 diodes. The first one indicates the charging status of the kit. The second one shows the battery voltage. And the third one shows whether there's an overload of energy or a short circuit. If the green diode is lit, it indicates that the panel is working properly and that an electrical current is being generated. If it is not, and I will cover the panel to do this. If there's no light on, that indicates that the panel is not generating any electrical current. It has just gone out. I now want to speak about the diode concerning the battery voltage. That's right here. When there's no light, when it's clear, that indicates that everything is okay. The battery is fully charged. When there's a flashing red light, that indicates that there's a problem with the battery. It's low in energy, and the charger will disconnect the flow of energy from the battery to make sure that it doesn't discharge completely. That means that the battery needs to recharge itself. A solid red light indicates that the battery is low in voltage. The last diode on the charger is an indicator of an overload or short circuit in the system. When the diode is dark or clear, that indicates that everything is okay, that there's not excessive consumption of energy. When it's a solid red line, that indicates that there is too much consumption from the electrical device, and so the flow of energy is cut off. A flashing red diode, that indicates there's either an overload in the system or a short circuit to the electrical device that it's connected to. 3 things to remember. The kit should not be connected to any electrical devices that have more than 120 watts of power. The charge controller, it gets very warm when it's operating, so it's best to keep it away from any flammable objects or facilities. And the last thing is to keep it clean. You can simply wipe it with a dry cloth. Next, I want to talk about the battery. The ACTIVESOL battery has here on the top a window that indicates the status of the battery. There are three types of statuses. The first one is a green light. If it's a green light, that indicates that everything is okay. The battery is fully charged. If there is a black light, that shows that the battery is low. In that case, you have to disconnect the electrical device that's consuming the energy and recharge the battery. If it's a white light, that indicates that the battery is almost completely discharged. In that case, you also need to disconnect the electrical device, pour distilled water into it, and then recharge the battery. A few things to remember about the ACTIVESOL battery. You should never let it discharge completely, and at least once a month it should be fully charged. The next thing to remember is to be sure that the negative cables are connected to the negative terminals, positive cables to positive terminals. And the last thing to remember is to never connect directly the battery with the battery controlled device. The last segment of this video concerns troubleshooting, problems that can arise during use or installation of the ACTIVESOL kit. One problem is that the battery refuses to charge. One thing we can look at to see where the source of the problem is to check the cables themselves, the cables coming from the controller to the battery. We want to make sure that the negative clamp from the controller is connected to the negative terminal of the battery, and the positive clamp, we want to make sure that it's on the positive terminal of the battery. If that's okay, then we want to have a look at the cables themselves from the battery to the controller to make sure that there's no damage to the cables themselves. If that looks all right, then we want to have a look at the controller itself. We want to make sure that no diodes are indicating any problem, any red lights or flashing red lights. If those look all right, then we want to have a look at the panel to make sure that the panel is in fact generating electricity. First, we want to have a look at the surface and make sure that it's not covered in any way. Maybe it's full of dust. We can simply, if it's dusty, we can simply clean the surface. If it's covered by something, some object, take it off of the panel. Or maybe it's in shade. There's some kind of area where it's not getting enough direct sunlight. If that's okay, then we want to look at the cables themselves that go from the panel itself to the controller. We want to make sure that the connections are okay, the first one and the second one. If the connections look okay, then we want to check those cables to make sure that they aren't damaged in any way. Another problem that may be seen is that the battery discharges too quickly. A cause for that may be the battery controlled device that is consuming energy from the battery. Some of them actually consume energy while on standby status. So the simple thing to do would be to just disconnect that device when it's not being used. It's important to remember too that the battery should be fully charged once a month, which may help with the battery not discharging so quickly. And it's important to remember that the battery controlled devices used should not consume more than 120 watts of power. Another problem that can occur is that the battery controlled device does not work. This may be caused by a discharged battery. To find out if that is the case, we just need to have a look at the active eye of the battery itself to see what it is indicating. As I mentioned before, if it's a green light, that shows that it's okay. But if it's a black light, that shows that the battery is low and it needs to be charged. If it's a white light, that shows that it is critically discharged and it needs to be recharged and distilled water added to it. Another thing that we can look at is we need to check the charge controller to make sure there is no blinking red diode. If there is one, that indicates that there's either a short circuit or an overload in the system. Once the short circuit or overload is removed, the charge controller should restore the flow of energy to the device within a few minutes. This completes the instructional video. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for choosing ACTIVESOL.